Today we're going to talk about this very interesting article that was released. Still feeling a little bit zonky. Population consensus estimated behavioral projections. All right, welcome back to Nuggets on the Go, episode number 6. Thanks, Daniel. And we're back. Thank you for staying with us on Nuggets on the Go, episode 4 and 5, the last 2 weeks. Now we are on a Friday morning. I'm still feeling a little bit zonky. Thankfully, I went for a jog this morning at 6 a.m. I still have a little bit more adrenaline and endorphin release in my body. So I hope that you are having a good day. Now, today we're going to talk about this very interesting article that was released on 19th of June on Straits Times. And we're going to take some reference on Straits Times, showing you on screen some of this articles that has popped up. Basically, it's the population consensus that was released in a 2-part research article that came out on June the 18th by our Singapore Department of Statistics. And I think this is a very important article for us to understand about the landscape of Singapore in terms of population, demographics that will probably be affecting our key decisions in the next 3, 5, 8, 10 years. I think we learned a lot of things from this article itself. And what I think we're going to do is that the PLB Insights team is our research and analysis team within Propertylimbrothers. We're going to come up with some very detailed, deep dive analysis on what we think will be some of the future estimated behavioral projections for housing, for accommodation, for the types of properties needs perhaps in the next 3 to 5 years. Especially, I think, as we are growing towards the year 2030. I'm not sure whether have we forgotten about this key article that was released in January 30th. Is that 30th? Oh, sorry. I don't think I got myopia right. Okay, January 30th, 2013. All right, and this was one of the very explosive article that came out. A lot of debate that were ongoing, that went on for about a year. People were talking about whether will population reach 10 million, will it reach 6.9 million by the year 2030. This was an article that technically helped us to look into some of the growth plans that our local government have. And I think definitely we trust our government. We know that based on their planning, they're looking really far ahead, and they're thinking about the growth rates in terms of our marriage rates in Singapore, in Singapore's population, the number of babies that are being born each year on year. And I think this article, everybody will more or less remember that we are projecting to hit about 6.9 million by 2030. So initially when this came out in 2013, a lot of people were thinking, oh no, it's not possible. I don't think it's possible and things like that. But when you look at this separate chart that was also released by Singapore Department of Statistics, January 2013, at a point in time, 2012, our population was about 5.31 million. And then the projection was that by 2020, we're going to hit about 5.8 to 6 million. Now, let's have a look at this. That was also being released just about last week. So at this point, I'm filming today is the 25th of June. So just a reference point for you. So as you can see, the census of population 2020, we are now at about 5.69 million. In 2010, there was about 5.08. So compare that to the 2013 article, pretty much about there. So we are now at 5.69. At that time, the estimated projection is 5.8 to 6 million. So it's slowed down a little bit in terms of population growth, but we are definitely increasing in terms of population. And as you can see, there's an increment in the amount of residents as well as non-residents. And these are all very interesting things that we want to look at. The permanent residents population has sort of like stabilized, they have plateaued, it's not much increment. In fact, there's a slight decrease as well. Something interesting is that by 2030, now when the year 2021, there's another 9 years to go. So by 2030, will we reach 6.9 million? I think definitely if it's in the plan, in our government's projection, very highly likely that it will happen. And I think overall it's good for the economy as well, because our birth rates keeps decreasing. Technically, with imbalance of aging population is not going to be very healthy for the overall economy, and our next generation is going to suffer because they are going to be the sandwich generation that needs to uplift and uphold the entire economy. If we have too much population that's in the aging population category. I have kids, you have kids as well. We are all thinking about our next generation. And let's come back to this. Now, I'm going to reference back to the Straits Time article. And there's two interesting reports. And one is this one as well, about 10 things that we can learn. And if you have time, do read on it. But what we're going to do is that in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to release some insights about this on propertylimbrothers.com/insights. You can head in and read on it. We're also going to come up with some social media summary on our Instagram and Facebook page, so you can also head on there as well. By the way, if you're not subscribed to our Telegram channel, head on to this link right here. They're going to flash it. It's also going to be in the description box down below. You can subscribe to our Telegram channel for daily updates. We update our audience daily on Telegram as well. Now, very first thing is that the population continues to gray. This is expected, definitely. Something to note about this is that when we think about real estate in particular in Singapore, what we're thinking is that this graying statistics is definitely happening. The next question that we want to ask ourselves is that if the population continues to gray for the next 10, 20, 30 years, because our baby boomers are now entering into another stage of their life. In future, I will be part of the growing population. So what is going to be the preferences in terms of housing for the growing population? I mean, all of us go through a cycle. I mean, when we completed our studies, our education, polytechnic, junior college or university in Singapore, we started working at about probably 24, 25, 26 years old. Ladies will start a little bit younger, maybe 22, 23. They enter into the workforce, save up a little bit. Generically speaking, most people started to settle down with their newly formed families between the age category of perhaps maybe between 28 to maybe 30 over years old. Then that is the first really purchase of their main pivot home. So their first property usually happens within that range. And then after they have lived in their property for perhaps 5 years, if it's a BTO flat or maybe a HDB resale, or maybe in a private property, at least 3 years for seller stamp duty to clear. So maybe their second property will start at the range of maybe in their mid-30s or all the way to the late 30s. So usually when you see families out in the market hunting for properties and they're upgrading to their second home, they are selling off their first purchase, buying a condominium, buying a new launch, buying a landed property. Usually they're in the range of about mid-30s to about late 30s or maybe early 40s as well. So that is the second phase that they will go through. And then usually they might settle down for a slightly longer period of time based on what we see. Of course, different families have different preferences, but most of the time, their decisions are being formed by the needs of their children's school. All right, and a lot of parents, because we're in Singapore, a little bit on meritocracy kind of underlying motivation that a lot of parents will have. They want their kids to be in schools that perhaps they think will add a lot of value to their lives, or perhaps maybe parents were in a certain alumni previously. But end of the day, a lot of focus are placed on location of the kids' schools needs. So even if let's say the children are studying in maybe different estates in suburban or maybe in the RCR region, or maybe in downtown core region, usually most of the time their shift towards their second and third home will cater to the needs of their children's needs in terms of primary school and secondary school. I mean, most of the time when they hit towards the polytechnic or junior college kind of age group, kids are able to travel themselves. So that's not too much of a concern. Most of the time it's really the primary school forming the bulk of the moving decision. And based on this sort of timeline that we're looking at, the last phase is usually when the kids have grown up and then the parents start to age into late 40s, 50s. And usually that's the defensive kind of strategy stage. Because, for example, if a couple is reaching towards their 50s, usually they'll be very concerned about making the final last move before age 54. Because by age 55, your retirement account will set in, and then what's going to happen is that there's going to be a lock-in amount in terms of the fulfillment of the retirement account in your CPF fund. So usually people want to make the final move so that they can utilize the amount in their ordinary account to their fullest ability before the lock-in sets in the retirement account. So that's when families usually turn towards a 50 kind of age bandwidth, and the kids are also growing up in the tertiary education stage, and thus they want to make the final move. And we want to understand if the population continues to grow, and we're looking at a slightly bigger population in this age category, what is going to be the preference of families in that age category? Will they usually downsize? Will they prefer to maybe move out of their landed properties because maybe they have seen appreciation in their landed properties, and then perhaps their landed property has appreciated to 3, 4, 5, 6 million. They want to exit and then pay off maybe like a huge HDB apartment at about 700,000, or maybe they want to pay off a 1.2 million condominium and then retire, right? And they don't want to have a landed property with staircase anymore. They just want to have a single level kind of apartment, husband and wife, and then the kids can visit them over the weekends. And they want a little bit more manageable in terms of space and what is going to be some of their mindset. So we want to look at that as well in the article. We'll chat more about this also following on. And then when we look at this second observation, which is that Singapore families are earning more in higher income brackets. When we look at this, coupled with some of the other findings over here, having more working couples, that means husband and wife are now working and being more educated together with both people, that means you have dual income in the household, that definitely perhaps contributed to a higher sort of combined income in terms of the monthly household income from work. So if you were to look at this, the surprising statistic is that families that are earning 20,000 and over, they have more than doubled over the last 10 years. So in 2010, that was like 6.6%. Now is like 13.9%. And what does this mean in terms of purchasing power, in terms of the total debt servicing ratio, income loaning ability for their next mortgage? And does it mean that families then will now look at bigger homes? If you study social psychology while you're in your tertiary education, maybe in some of your secondary schools, you probably have already seen this triangle chart called Maslow hierarchy of needs. And the 5 level of needs usually states that level 1 and 2 are the basic needs. Home has always been under the shelter category to be one of our core needs. So usually the very first thing that a working adult want to settle first is their home, followed by their transport. I mean, of course, sometimes they will vice versa. They might get a car first instead of getting a home. But of course, we advise all young people to first save up enough down payment, get your home first, and then before you get your car, right? Because a car only lasts for 10 years. So a home will at least last you for, I mean, like at least 90 over years if you go for like a newer apartment, right? So go for a home first before you head for your car. And that's definitely very wise planning. Now, families will definitely want to settle these two very important things: housing, accommodation, followed by your transportation. And if a family has increased incomes over the years, maybe their combined income starting when they're working is close to maybe about 8,000. And then as they work in their companies, they perform well, both their combined income now shift up towards the 12,000, 15,000, and then eventually crosses the 20 over thousand bandwidth mark. We want to look at what is the income loaning ability. And of course, if you punch in some numbers in a lot of total debt servicing ratio, you'll find that as the family inches above 20,000, of course, we didn't go into detail about what is like the age category of usually families with income more than 20,000. Let's say, for example, if they are in their mid-30s or late 30s, and both combined income is like $25,000, easily this family can afford to move to a landed property. So we want to understand, because of this, will there be an uptick in terms of larger apartments, in terms of landed homes, in terms of families moving inwards towards the core central region? Because this level of income will then allow more families to either go for bigger properties, properties of a higher quantum, properties in more of the core central region, and thus will this then beef up a lot more demand in these few key areas. So these are also things that we want to understand. So when we look at the next thing on households shrinking to 3 or fewer members, when we look at maybe this total statistics, all right, by the way, this chart is fantastic, okay. So there's an increase in terms of 2-person household, from 80.8% to 22.6%. And then, of course, 3% household is pretty much similar. 4% that household, there was a decrease, and then 5% decrease as well. And then 1% household increase. So there's also an increase in the amount of single household. So what does this mean if there's a increase over the past 10 years in the amount of single family requirement and 2% family requirement? And of course, 3% family requirement technically stays the same, and then 4%, 5% reduces. So what does this mean? And then how does it balance out with the recent trend that in the past 12 months there's been so much uptake in the amount of larger size apartments? And does it balance off because of the change in lifestyle changes with work from home because of the pandemic, kids studying from home because of pandemic as well? Does it balance out with this shrinking household in Singapore? So that's also something that we want to understand. But most importantly, there's also this stats that there are aging residents living alone, and thus households with at least one member aged 65 years and over, you have seen that increase from 24% to 35%. So does it mean that because of this, more aging families, they are now staying with their current family as well? So does it mean that they then need bigger properties? So all these have certain kind of impact with the type of properties and accommodation that people are looking at in the market. And we want to understand a little bit more about this in some of our research articles done by our PLB Insights team. And stay tuned for our PLB Insights article series, and we're going to cover that a little bit more. And so meantime, we're going to wrap up this episode, and we'll see you on the next one. And we're going to deep dive a little bit more to some of the very particular types of population census that we think might affect the housing market in the next 3 to 5 years. So meantime, we'll see you on the next one. My name is Melvin. Thank you for staying with us. And meantime, take care. Cheers.